Hi everyone and welcome back to Storytime. So today we're going to be reading this book and it's called Vinnie Goes to Vegas and it's from the O'Brien Press Leprechaun Land series and it's written by Stephen Walsh and Marita O'Donovan and illustrated by Diane Feyer. So listen along and we can read it together. Vinnie the leprechaun lived in the village of Ballynadeenybeg. He worked as a metalsmith, making gleaming buckles for dancing shoes and leprechaun boots, shiny buttons for smart green leprechaun jackets. Now Vinnie had a great many friends. All the leprechauns loved to come to his shop to chat and pass the time of day. When the weather was cold, they sat by the fire telling the old stories and singing the old songs. There were always happy voices and laughter to be heard if you passed Vinnie's little workshop. Vinnie worked hard, even when the shop was full of people. He carefully hammered metal into perfect buttons and buckles. Then he ground and polished them until they were beautifully smooth. Finally, he brushed them with a gold-coloured paint till they shone like treasure. However, poor old Vinnie was not a wealthy leprechaun. Because he worked only with tin and copper and not with real silver and gold, and how long Vinnie longed to be rich. "Musha," he used to sigh, "wouldn't it be great to have no patch in my trousers and no leak in my roof and to have more to eat than a few potatoes? And wouldn't it be great never have to go to work? I could go fishing and play golf wherever I wanted and feast on beautiful food and dress like a king." Vinnie's friends used to laugh at his wishing and dreaming. Then one day, Larry the shoemaker leprechaun said, "What you need, Vinnie, is a horseshoe. Surely you know that a horseshoe will bring the finder good luck." "Is that so?" said Vinnie. "Yes," said Larry, "and if you do find one, be sure to keep it upright or hanging over your door so that your luck will always last." One fine Friday evening, after a busy week of work, Vinnie turned the big key in his workshop and set off for home. He walked through the winding lanes of Ballynadeenybeg village and out to the other side. It was unusually warm for March, and Vinnie was tired, so he sat into a ditch to rest for a moment. The warmth of the setting sun was delightful, and soon Vinnie fell fast asleep. Vinnie was wakened a short time later by a clattering noise. He looked up, and in a big cloud of dust, he saw the retreating hooves of 3 donkeys, homeward bound after the day's turf cutting. "Achoo!" he sneezed. After the dust settled, Vinnie saw something glinting in the laneway. He picked up the gleaming object. What was it but a little horseshoe? He slipped it into his pocket, danced jig, and went home. The next day was Saturday, and Vinnie decided to go fishing. He could not believe his luck when he caught a massive brown trout almost immediately. Then he cast his rod again and caught another, and another, and another. By lunchtime, Vinnie had caught so many trout that he had to give them away to friends. He still had some left over, which he sold to Feyer, the leprechaun fishmonger, who paid him handsomely. Well, maybe it is a lucky horseshoe after all, Vinnie thought. And that was just the beginning of it. That night, Vinnie won a pig in a raffle, and then he beat his friends at cards. And on Sunday, when he went to feed his big new pig, he noticed that all the vegetables in the vegetable patch had grown huge overnight. "I'm going to be rich," Vinnie shouted. "The richest leprechaun in Ballynadeenybeg, maybe even the whole wide world." Armed with his lucky horseshoe, he would be unstoppable. He would have everything he ever desired and more besides. But where would he go to make his fortune? Vinnie thought and eventually it came to him: Las Vegas. But how was he going to get there? The next day, while Vinnie was down at the market selling his giant vegetables, he heard tell of a couple from the human world who were getting married the day before St. Patrick's Day at a nearby hotel called the Shamrock. And they were going on their honeymoon, Las Vegas. So Vinnie went along to the Shamrock on St. Patrick's Eve, and while everyone at the wedding was dancing, he found the couple's big brown suitcase and tucked himself away inside. After a while, he fell asleep, holding his horseshoe tightly. And it was lucky he did, because the next day, the big brown suitcase got a mightily jostling as it went through the airport, onto the plane, and off again on its arrival in Las Vegas. When the couple reached their hotel, Vinnie was able to make his getaway. Vinnie wandered along the busy Las Vegas Strip. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was a lot bigger than Ballynadeenybeg. There were lights and fountains and music everywhere. There were grand hotels, much bigger than the Shamrock, casinos where people went to win money. After a few minutes, Vinnie came to a huge white building that seemed to open up like a book. The sign on the top read, "The Mirage." That sounds like a right casino for a leprechaun, he thought. The uniformed doorman at the Mirage smiled and swung open the door, and in went Vinnie, clutching his horseshoe. There were people everywhere, all shapes and sizes, from all over the world. No one even noticed Vinnie. Why would you pay attention to someone dressed as a leprechaun on St. Patrick's Day? And the fun began. Pulling the handle of a slot machine, Vinnie immediately won $1,000. When he played roulette, he won thousands more. Then blackjack and poker. Within a few hours, he had won more money than he could spend in 100 lifetimes. When the other customers asked him his secret, Vinnie simply replied, "Sure haven't I the luck of the Irish?" The next few days passed in the same manner. Vinnie went to the casino for a few hours and won and won. Then he ate his dinner and he retired to his hotel to count his winnings. As the week went on, he struck up a friendship with the doorman of the Mirage. Vinnie thought he must be a millionaire for sure, with all the fancy gold buttons on his suit, but it turned out the doorman wasn't wealthy at all, that he had to work long hours at the casino to pay his bills. On his last day in Las Vegas, Vinnie asked the doorman his name. "Chuck O'Leary," he said. Vinnie laughed. "You're Irish. You should come to Ireland and meet your relatives." Then he gave Chuck a very generous tip. Chuck looked at the hundreds and hundreds of dollars in his hand. "Gee, thanks. I can use the money to make that trip to Ireland, and maybe we could even meet up." Vinnie smiled. He wasn't at all sure about the meeting up bit. Chuck might have trouble finding him in Ballynadine Beg. That night in his hotel, Vinnie counted the mountain of money again, then stuffed some of it into his leprechaun hat. The rest he shoved into his sleeves, his pockets, his shoes and his socks. Then he paid his bill, checked out and ran around the corner to the honeymoon couple's hotel. Vinnie was wary of winning, and he missed the rain, rainbows and green fields of home. So as soon as he jumped into the couple's suitcase, he fell fast asleep and slept all the way home. Now that Vinnie was rich beyond his wildest dreams, he built an enormous mansion on the outskirts of Ballynadine Beg and nailed the lucky horseshoe up over the front door. He bought a white sofa, a dream kitchen and a gigantic TV. He built a swimming pool and a golf course in his back garden. He even put a few fountains out in front to remind him of Las Vegas. As he no longer needed to work, Vinnie spent most of his time swimming in his pool, watching TV and practicing his golf. He always got a hole-in-one. It was great for a while, but soon Vinnie found that his big house was empty. No one wanted to play cards or golf with him or even go fishing with him because it was just too annoying that Vinnie kept winning all the time. One day, Vinnie decided to go for a walk. Feeling miserable and cross, he slammed the front door behind him as hard as he could. With that, the horseshoe fell and landed with a mighty bump on his head. In that moment, Vinnie realised that there was a such thing as too much good luck. Maybe he didn't need a horseshoe after all. For what use was all the luck in the world if he didn't have any satisfaction of his work and the company of his friends? With that, Vinnie lifted up the horseshoe and threw it into the air. He watched as it curved in a high arc and fell to earth far across the valley. Then he ran to Ballynadine Beg, opened his workshop, dusted down the counters and started making buttons and buckles again. In no time at all, word spread that Vinnie was back, and everyone gathered in the shop to celebrate his return. Vinnie donated his mansion to the whole village so that all the leprechauns could swim and play golf whenever they liked. Then he moved back into his old house where he lived, perhaps not luckily, but definitely happier ever after. And the horseshoe, well, a certain doorman called Chuck O'Leary had used his tip money to come to Ireland, where he met his relatives and he had a great time. He tried to find his friend Vinnie, telling everyone, he's got to be the richest guy in Ireland, and maybe even the shortest too, but no one had ever heard of Vinnie. On the last evening of his holiday, Chuck went out walking through the winding lanes and green fields. Suddenly, a horseshoe came flying out of the sky and landed at his feet. What a neat souvenir, he thought, picking it up. As he slipped the horseshoe into his pocket, Chuck was overcome by a very strong feeling that his luck was about to change.